Okay. Hey, everybody. I think we're live. So awesome. Thank you to those of you who are showing up. I see names appearing. Let me know that you can hear me and perhaps send us a little note in the chat where you're from. It'd be great to see the locations that we are getting you all from. Wow, look at all the people. This is fantastic. Hello, Sue. We have Dr. Roberts in the house. This is great. Oh, let me see. I think you're muted. Let me see if I can unmute. Oh,
How's that?
perfect. Beautiful.
Okay.
Okay. Dr. Roberts and I were just chatting beforehand about getting everything working, and it is. So thank you, everybody, so much for coming in and spending this time with us. We have a lot of good stuff for you, like a good teacher that Dr. Roberts is, academic teacher, researcher. She has prepared really great answers for your questions. So we're going to get to that in just a sec. We're also going to try, I'm just setting us up here, to also share this on Facebook for everybody. So hopefully that will work out. And we're also recording this. I suggest everybody take notes because we have a lot to share with you. And if you miss anything, don't worry, because there is a recording. And just check your email and social media, and we will get that recording up as well. So I'm multitasking here while we try to get the Facebook stream going too. So
You always do such a great job, Lee.
thank you. We took questions ahead of time, as you all may have noticed. So we are prioritizing those questions that came first, because Dr. Roberts has really thought carefully about your questions, and we want to give you really good answers. So we're going to work off those first. There is a Q&A in the chat. Actually, there's a Q&A and a chat, right? So it's probably easier for you all to use the chat. I know that a lot of people are going to be on tablets and phones, and it's really hard to get all those controls up on a little screen, right? So I will save the chat, and I will ask for some of your feedback in the chat as well. If you have questions as we go, please share them in the chat. We want to hear your questions. We may not be able to answer all of them. So depending on how it goes, we may do a second or a third one of these if you find it helpful. But we want your feedback, we want your questions, we want to be of help. We're going to work off of our list to begin with, though. So Dr. Roberts, I know you suggested this to me initially, wanting to help people and give something to the community. What are your thoughts about what's going on right now?
Well, I think our lives have changed forever, right? I mean, nobody's unaffected by this. It's just the hugest thing. The whole world is affected, and it's clearly going to get worse before it gets better. And nutrition is one of the things that we can do to help ourselves stay safe. And with my expertise, I thought that it was the right thing to do to try and share that around.
Absolutely. Nutrition is so important to what we're doing and managing our health. So what we've done here, so I'm just reading off of our question list here. You were mentioning to me there are some topics that you want to touch on. I think the question sort of basically came into three buckets, right? Infection,
Okay.
managing illness.
Yes. So, as I was thinking through this, I mean, in my own family, we've been working through these issues with nutrition as well. And I would say that, because the situation changes daily, as my answers have been evolving too. But as I was thinking this, I was thinking it really in three buckets. One was preventing foodborne infections. Um, so making sure that food doesn't become a fomite that brings the virus into your house unwittingly. Two is what you can do to help yourself if you catch coronavirus related to nutrition. And three, how to emerge healthy and svelte in the future. And I'm going to try and cover all of those today, but we did get an enormous number of questions, so I apologize in advance if we don't get to the end. And I would say that my general attitude to life is that when you're given lemons, you make lemonade. That's a very British thing, but it's also an American thing. You know, we're survivors. We're resilient in the face of overwhelming odds. And with the coronavirus, we haven't just been given lemons. You know, we've been given quinces, or we've been given anchovy paste or something. I mean, it's just like an overwhelming and terrible thing. And our challenge is how to reconstruct our lives and societies in a good and healthy way. And at some point, we're going to come through this. That's not today, but we can come through as best we can now, and we can prepare for the future. And so I want to really think about all of those things, you know, in sequence.
Yeah, I think the situation is going to keep evolving, and we're going to have to keep adjusting to things as they
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
You know, one of the common themes coming through a lot of your questions, everybody, was wanting to know with some certainty what's going to happen. You know, how can I absolutely have an answer that will work for preventing illness? Or, you know, it's just so much is unknown. It would be nice to have more that's known. And I think what's going on right now is the reality is going to keep changing.
Yeah, no, it's totally unknown, isn't it? I mean, I am right now. I'm expecting that America will be worse than Italy because, you know, we've been containing it in a more casual way than Italy. I mean, that may not be true because certainly we've got 2 or 3 months of notice because this started in China back in December. So we have had some time. We're very unprepared. But I know that there's been 54 randomized trials in China on different drug regimens. And so some of those are going to be coming out, I imagine, in the next 2 or 3 months. I haven't reviewed any of them because it's really not my specialty. But if there's any possibility that the HIV antivirals or quinine or any of these other treatments that are coming along, possibly plasma from people who've been infected and recovered is another trial. If all of the trials are being accelerated today, a phase 1 vaccine trial, that's to say a safety trial, has already been started from one of the recombinant RNA companies in the US. So there's a huge amount of things going on. But meanwhile, New York City today projected that things would be worse in April than they are in March, and worse in May than they are in April. So I think we need to dig in and prepare for things to get worse before they get better.
Yeah, yeah. It's great that you're connected to research. You have those connections through Tufts, through your academic and research networks. So we will try to feed you all good news. I think we're getting a lot of bad news. So hopefully if we can feed everybody some good news about developments that are happening, the science community is really stepping up. And you know, hopefully things will get better as a result of everyone's good efforts, the frontline workers, as well as the science community. So let's get into your questions. We broke them up into categories, and we'll take them one category at a time. So the first one is about safety and preventing foodborne infection. So you go into the store, there's fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, people may have been touching, you don't know how they were handled. And then there's also human contact, right? So we heard from a cashier working at a natural food store, and you know, you're face to face with people all the time. And then even if you're shopping, you're going to be around people in these places. Even if you're limiting the amount you shop, we still have to go out periodically.
Wow.
So let's talk about that a bit.
How to do our best to prevent foodborne infections on both sides. And I really appreciate hearing from someone who's on the cashier side, because, you know, it's easy when you're rushing through the supermarket and worried to not worry about them. But they are being extraordinarily brave and resilient to be willing to do that difficult job at this time. So it's a new virus. We all know that not much is known yet. There have been several studies looking at the viability of the virus on different surfaces. So it lives on cardboard for about 2 days. It lives on plastic for about 5 days. And we also know that people can be infectious before they have any symptoms. Some people never have any symptoms, but they're still infectious for others. So, you know, with that background, how do you stay healthy while still eating, obviously? And I've been formulating these rules, if you like, for my own family, and I'll suggest them to everyone here in case they're helpful. For me, I think, you know, shopping up a bit, not excessively, because I really don't think we're going to run out of food in America. We are a net surplus producer of food. We export food around the world. There isn't fundamentally a food shortage, but panic buying has certainly reduced the availability of certain foods in the supermarkets and online. So there may be shortages right now of individual things. It's my belief that those supply chains will work themselves out so that that's not going to be fundamentally be a long-term problem. So I'm not personally worried about things like milk and fresh milk and eggs and fresh fruits and vegetables running out. I'm worried about whether I should be buying them and what to do with them when I get them in my house. You know, so it's really a different kind of worry, if you like. In terms of visiting supermarkets, I think that restricting how frequently you go is a terrific thing to do. If you can go to the supermarket once every 2 weeks rather than twice a week, for example, you've reduced your exposure by a factor of 4. And, you know, it's just a simple math problem. So, you know, washing your hands beforehand, being really careful not to touch your hands and face. I personally use a string to tie my glasses on my face, so I'm not having to keep pushing them up all the time when I go shopping. And then, of course, washing your hands when you get back. Those are simple things which everybody can do, which will substantially reduce the risk. Ordering online is probably even less risky because, you know, something like Amazon, for example, they're using robots in the warehouses largely. So you've only got one person, which is like the delivery person almost, who is at risk of infecting you on the cardboard. And if you use gloves and hand sanitizer to get your foods out of the packages, if you wipe down the cartons of milk with alcohol or something like that, that's a pretty low risk way to get food in. I've used both Amazon and also Instacart. And I would say that the great thing about Instacart is that you can look and see what's available in what different supermarkets. So for example, Whole Foods had run out of whole grain flour, which I use quite a lot of. And I went on to Instacart and I found it in a Star Market in Boston this morning. So Instacart, you know, the web is providing us with, you know, very powerful ways to keep as many aspects of our normal life as we can. So ordering online is a great thing. As I said, I do think washing off the plastic containers, wiping the cardboard down with alcohol is great. Or you can simply leave them sitting outside your house for a few days if they're shelf stable. If you've ordered cans of beans or something like that, you don't have to open the box today. Just leave it out there for a bit. I have also made the personal decision to only eat cooked food at this time, just because I think the fact that people can transmit the virus when they're not infectious or before they have, they can transmit the virus when they don't have any symptoms. Either they're never going to have symptoms or they haven't yet had symptoms, means that the people, you know, looking at the strawberries in the supermarket can be coughing onto the strawberries, or handling the boxes or something like that, and then you can pick up the virus that way. So I will be shopping every 2 weeks, but I will only be eating cooked food. And I'm thinking about what to do about things like salads, which is going to be a sadness. But for now, we're going without.
Mhm.
Um, for our cashier, I think, thank you for continuing that job. It's such important work these days. In addition to, wiping down with alcohol and no hand to mouth contact, which you did mention in your question, I thought the thing I would additionally suggest perhaps is having a shower when you get home, and wearing fresh clothes every day, and washing those before you reuse them, as ways to reduce the potential for infection that way.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's a lot in the news now about frontline health workers, nurses, doctors, and the amazing work that they're doing. And I really think that people in the food chain are frontline health workers as well. The people working in the grocery stores, the
Yeah.
people delivering your food, the people even packing those boxes at Amazon and the Instacart delivery. They're out there working for us, trying to keep us safe. And they deserve our gratitude.
Right.
Really.
I'm personally doubling my tip on all Instagram orders at this time. I mean, I think there's so many people who are on hourly wages, and that, small things like that will help spread money around from those of us who are still receiving a salary, even though
Yeah,
we're
the
working at
Instacart.
home.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should clarify that when we talk about the virus living on surfaces, it's not like living at 100% intensity for 2 or 3 or 4 days and then dropping off to zero, right? It declines. So um, I just don't want to put out there I don't want to inflate concerns about that. So it does taper off. Is it like a straight line, or is it more logarithmic as it dies on
It's
surfaces?
it's an exponential line, so it's coming down most rapidly and then gradually over time.
Hmm.
You, you know, the science is very imperfect. I mean, everybody's rushing out these studies. Um, there was one study, for example, that said the half-life of the virus on cardboard was 2 hours. And what that means is that if you have 1,000 virus particles now, you'll have 500 in 2 hours. You'll have 250 in 4 hours. And so that shows that kind of rapid going down to shallow decline. Um, but the trouble with those kinds of calculations is we don't really know, how many virus particles is going to be a problem. Um, the other way people have done those studies, if they've said what's the limit of detection. So rather than kind of tracking the exponential change, they've said, can we detect it in the lab at what times? And for cardboard, the answer is about 2 days. But that's also flawed because because the lab tests are as imperfect as lab tests. So, it's not that they can detect one virus particle. They
Right.
can detect a number, and we don't know today what the magic number is for what you have to be below in order to be safe. We're just all doing our best here, I think.
Right. And what kind of cardboard? What are the conditions? Is it in sunlight? What's the
Yeah,
humidity? What's the temperature? There are a lot of variables
yeah,
that
yeah,
could
yeah. Totally.
affect this. So everybody wash your hands, don't touch your face, keep everything clean. Related to
Right.
this, we got one question in chat from Janet, which I think relates to, like, if you don't have alcohol, because alcohol is one of these things that people panic bought, can you use soapy water to wipe down your delivery packages or the food containers?
Um,
And also, would that work for things like cucumbers, for like hard rind things like cucumbers, peppers, tomatoes? Where can soap work into this, do you think?
oh yeah, I mean, all I can do is give you my best guesses here. I mean, so I I have to admit, I was in an Indian supermarket picking up some rice a week ago, and I'd already decided to not eat raw foods. And I saw this irresistible packet of guavas. Um, and the guavas, fresh guavas, I lived in Africa, fresh guavas are the kind of things I dream about. And there was these perfectly ripe fresh guavas there, and I couldn't resist them, and I put them in my cart. And then I got home, and my family reminded me that I had made a decision not to eat raw food. So what could I do with these guavas? So I parboiled them. I got a large pot of water, and I put them in for 2 minutes so that they were not cooked. They weren't raw, unfortunately, but they were still very good. When they were not cooked. That kind of thing, I think you can do perfectly well for something like tomatoes. I mean, I don't think lettuce would survive that kind of treatment. But tomatoes, um, possibly even pears, and
You could stew them. I mean, things like pears and apples, you can turn into lovely desserts too with heat. So
well,
that's an
so
option.
okay, so a delicious way to have apples. I mean, certainly fresh apples are wonderful. But with my no raw policy in my house, I've been making baked apples, and in everybody's microwave is different. But it's really easy to just core out an apple of your choice, put a bit of cinnamon inside it if you have it, put a teaspoon of raisins inside if you have it, put like a couple of tablespoons of water in your container and close the lid. And then if you microwave it for 4 minutes or 4.5 minutes, depending on your microwave, it's wonderful. It's as good as a fresh apple, in my opinion, perhaps better. I had
Mm,
one last night, and it was, made my heart swell. It was so good.
excellent. Yeah, and I love cinnamon. So anytime I get to use cinnamon, it's awesome. And you brought up a really great point. Like, it's wonderful to have Dr. Roberts here telling us that she made an impulse buy in the grocery store, because it just shows how universal that happens. What a universal thing it is. Like, if you're going into a grocery store without a list, in iDiet, we're very big on lists and planning, right?
Yeah,
So we have our easy plans for you. We tell you to make a shopping list. We tell you to plan out your week. I always say, never put in your mouth what's not on your plan, because then you can't make a mistake, right? And, today's times are pretty extraordinary. So you may want to have a list that's more like a tree. So I want this, and if I can't get this, I'll get this. And if I can't get this, I'll get this. But I'm hearing from a lot of people who are walking into the store and just pulling stuff into the cart, because when we panic, the old habits run, and the old habits are going to go back to childhood foods, comfort foods, packages of cookies and chips and all that stuff, right? So,
right.
we should talk a little bit, like, this is off of our plan that we carefully devised, but it might be a good time to talk about those kinds of strategies. What do you
Oh,
think?
I think lists are invaluable. And I will say in my excuse, I had a list. I just got something in addition to the list.
It happens,
Uh,
right? Yeah.
so yeah, right. But I think we are moving into a very uncertain time for food. I don't think we're going to be unable to get food, but we may not always be able to get exactly what we want. And so being flexible about, do you put carrots or kale in your soup? You're going to put some kind of vegetable non-starchy. Does it really matter which kind? No. And I think, in the spirit of empowerment, we're going to learn a lot through these experiments. We're going to be flexible about what we do, and that's going to be a source of power, especially if we share that. I mean, I'm sure that the Facebook site and the iDiet message boards can be places to share all of the experiments that people have to go through because they couldn't get this and they could get that, for example.
Yeah, it could be an opportunity to try new things.
Yeah, yeah,
When I was at the store last, it was right before everything went crazy. So it'll be interesting when I have to go back. But all the tuna was gone, and the sardines were still there. So that's an example of, you can still get preserved canned fish. It may be a different flavor, right? Or it's an opportunity to try something new. Keep
right.
keep our guidelines in mind for what's iDiet legal,
Uh-huh.
you know, think about protein and fiber and high nutrient foods, and we'll get into that also. But
Right.
you can also think about things in terms of categories and what's generally healthy. Keep your eyes
I
open.
think so. Yes, I think general categories of foods, lists when you go in, um, for people who have, are very challenged with stress eating at this time, which is totally understandable, or evening eating, comfort food. They're all alone, and what do? They're turning to food for comfort. I also think that food logging is actually another great thing. I mean, I'm not a big fan of food logging generally, but we're moving into a new world where, being able to have something to look after ourselves, to be accountable to ourselves with a food log may actually be very helpful.
That's a really good point. I mean, I'm a big fan of externalizing your brain and using tools where you can, because especially when you're stressed, like it's just the way the brain is built. We talk a lot about habits in iDiet, building healthy habits, resilient habits, bringing new habits in that work. But when we're stressed, we go back to the oldest habits, and it kind of cuts off our logic and our willpower and our ability to think flexibly in the moment. So making these plans in advance, making lists in advance, not
Right.
only of the foods you're going to get, but what behaviors am I going to do? What am I decide in advance, kind of like if then, like if I'm feeling stressed, I'm going to eat these foods, not these foods. I'm going to busy myself with knitting or crafts or something else. Um, thinking things through ahead of time so that you know how you're going to react rather than just, reacting. I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also I think, rules and goals are going to be very useful at this time. So for someone who has a weakness for nibbling throughout the day, I think saying, I'm going to have 3 meals and 2 snacks. I'm going to not eat breakfast before 8 a.m. in the morning. I am going to finish dinner by 6 p.m. So, you can make up your own rules, but, making up things to constrain your behavior and then writing it all down, and, maybe enlisting family members to help, who are doing the same thing with you maybe, or who will hold your hand, look at your food record, um, ways to hold yourself internally and externally accountable to goals to goals that will support healthy eating and weight management during this time. I mean, it's my real hope that we can all come through this, healthier and in better shape than ever before. We're home, we've got time to cook, we've certainly stressed out, but it is a kind of a golden time in another way if you look at it through a different lens.
Yeah, in iDiet, we talk a lot about eating healthy food when you're hungriest, because when you're hungry is when your brain is primed to learn that the food that you're putting in your mouth is nutritious and keeping you alive, right? And I think, we could talk about this briefly, but when you're most stressed, if you choose the right behavior, it's kind of like feeding your brain behavior food. And it's a great way to take on and learn new healthy behaviors rather than old unhealthy behaviors.
Definitely, definitely. And substitute activities. So another thing that I think we need to talk about is exercise. Especially for those of us who used to commute into work, and we've now been told to stay home. And Tufts closed our labs and all our human and animal experiments as of last Thursday. So we used to get quite a lot of casual exercise just going to work, right? So, if you took the train or walking from your car, going out to pick up lunch, going down the street for a meeting, um, there was more exercise than you might have imagined, and suddenly that's gone. And so I think having, perhaps even 2 times a day when you do some exercise, and there's so many good videos on YouTube. It can be as simple as walking up and down the stairs, or it can be a yoga routine, or it can be leg lifts, or if you live in a rural place and you can stay at least 6 feet away from people, it can be, a healthy walk. But I think having daily exercise as well will help reduce the stress. It will be an activity to turn to that's not food. So I think exercise is another thing that we should be thinking of prioritizing to keep ourselves healthy, during this time.
Yeah, just to burn off even, I mean, it's great for weight control, but it's also a way to burn off nervous energy and have a sense of control over your own destiny, right?
Right,
And,
right.
we're in a time right now where we've been talking a lot about scarcity, but one thing that's infinite is not only everybody's creativity and resourcefulness, but the internet. So there's a lot here that we can't address specifically. I see a comment about yard work to do. Awesome. Yeah. Do some yard work. Chores around the house, right? Fixing things.
Yeah.
So what's infinite is the apps that are available. Like Sue was saying, calorie tracking apps. Anything that you do to write down what you're doing helps to keep you honest, helps to keep your willpower engaged, the front part of your brain that can be cut off when we're nervous or distracted or worried. Using paper, using an app to track these things, like Dr. Roberts was saying, can really help keep you honest and aware and alert about what's going on, and keep your intentionality on, right? And then there's YouTube, right? So you can find yoga, you can find stretching, you can find at-home exercises. I know a lot of experts they're reorienting what they're doing to stream and provide services. This is a great time to meet a new exercise coach or a new fitness buddy or something. And you can even
Right.
get together with friends virtually and do things as well. You can talk on the phone while you're out walking with friends and family. So get creative with it. You don't have to do exactly what you've always done, as long as you're doing something.
I just saw a message come through on the phone, on the screen, about yard work as well. Yeah, I think gardening is a terrific thing. You get to be outside, you improve your house.
Mm.
So yes, lots of different ways and the extent to which you can choose these things that you want to do, you're going to feel very good about it, and you're more likely to keep them up.
And especially things like gardening, where it has to grow, right? You're planning for the future. Anything you do that's planning for the future is going to subconsciously be of great help, because it assumes a future. And I think we all
Right. I'm
like that,
personally
right?
planning to grow tomatoes, and I will chart the course of my success or failure, perhaps as a blog. I've never grown tomatoes before,
Oh, awesome.
but I want to try.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's get back onto our plan. And I should just say some housekeeping things. I see a couple of hands raised. It's hard to respond to those. So if you could put any questions you have, and we love your comments too, in the chat, we can respond to them there. So I'd like to channel everybody's responses into the chat to make it easier for us and my tiny brain to track. It also appears that we're live on Facebook. So hello, Facebook world. If that's working, I'm thrilled, because this is the first time we're doing that, right? So let's get back to our agenda of questions. We have some happy things to talk about, but the next thing on our topic list right now is, what happens if you do think you're coming down with the virus, get the virus? What do you eat? How do you manage your health in terms of nutrition and food when you get sick?
So, not many people are talking about this too much yet, but I think it's clear that the hospitals may get overwhelmed. That, if you come down with a fever and a dry cough, which are typically the first symptoms, or they can also be headaches and GI issues as first symptoms. And, the first thing you're supposed to do is call your primary care physician. They're unlikely to tell you to come into the hospital at this point. You're going to be told to wait until you get symptoms that require hospitalization in many states. Certainly New York is already at that state, depending on, how many beds there are and things like that. So they're probably not even going to test you until you need hospitalization. So we need to think about how we're going to eat and do our best to come through the illness at home. We don't want to inadvertently speed our time into the hospital when in fact we could simply manage this disease perfectly nicely in the comfort of our bedroom. So I'll tell you what I've done again. And these are just, I'm telling you my personal story because I'm working through this for myself and my family. But so one thing I've done is I've cooked quite a lot of dinners, and I've cooked as many dinners as I had freezer space, because if I get sick, I want to be able to have a good dinner, and I don't want to get frustrated with my family that they're not providing the food I want at that time. So I've cooked a bunch of dinners, and they are in there, and all I have to do is microwave them. And it's not going to be food or money that goes to waste because I like that food. And so if I don't need it when I'm sick, I'll eat them another time. So that's one thing I'm doing. I got hold of some Tylenol. I hope everyone already has Tylenol, and if not, that they can find some in their local CVS. I've also have to admit, and when I told this to Lee, he was yucked out about this, but I also got in a small amount of carnation breakfast and Ensure because I would like some liquid calories with vitamins and protein for if I don't feel like eating solid food.
If you don't have the energy to cook for yourself.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And you can only eat dinner once a day. So what are you going to do for breakfast and lunch and some snacks? And I'm thinking liquid, something really easy to digest might be just the ticket. The other thing that I've planned for is to prevent dehydration, because dehydration is obviously a risk if you're running a high fever, which is one of the symptoms. And the dehydration will make the symptoms of the coughing much worse, obviously. So making sure you stay well hydrated will be an important thing to do to keep yourself out of hospital. And to do that, I ended up buying some dried packages of glucose electrolyte solution that I can just make up into a drink with by adding water. Pedialyte would do the same job. And I also ignored my previous diet advice. I stocked up a little bit of fruit juice, shelf-stable fruit juice, because dilute fruit juice with a pinch of salt would be a substitute hydration, which would work quite well if you can't come across any Pedialyte or glucose electrolyte solution. So I've prepared in different ways, and I'm willing to just eat the cost of the Ensure and the carnation breakfast and not drink them if I don't get sick. But they're sitting there, and they're giving me some peace of mind.
Mm. And I think we should clarify that this is if you don't feel like eating. If you're at a point where you're not taking in food, there's still certain things that you need, right? So we get a lot of liquid actually in our food if we're eating solid food. And if you're not eating solid food, then you need to take in more liquids. And I think that's what you're pointing to, Dr. Roberts, is
Right.
getting, the body does need some salt. So if you put a little natural salt in your in your in your water or your very, very, very dilute fruit juice, that can be helpful for your recovery, right? It's not your primary thing, but it's if you're not eating. Is that accurate?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. We also got a comment, I think, from a health worker that talking about fever. So fever is actually good for fighting a virus if it's not too high. All right. So is there anything you want to say about like how you would manage a fever? Because you mentioned Tylenol, which I think is with this specific virus considered the safest fever reducer. There are certain others that may be of more concern. Um, but there's sort of a sweet spot with fever. Yes.
I'm not an MD, and I would be reluctant to pronounce on that. But I think anybody who comes down with the symptoms should be certainly in touch with their primary care physician. And asking them about that, at what point with a fever should you take them, and it's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, yeah. And this is a great place to mention telehealth. I think a lot of offices, hospitals, and there are straight on telehealth providers. People are shifting to more virtual forms of support. And that's a great place to take medical questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so let's pivot now from what happens if you get sick to how to prevent illness, because that's what I think we all want to do. And we should just say here, like, it's not a question of avoid getting this or you will die, right? It's avoid getting this so that you won't be a burden on the health system is really the sort of the primary way to think about this. So let's talk about avoiding supporting our immune system and nutrition. So we had questions such as um, what vitamins should we be going for, like C or elderberry is in the interwebs right now, vitamin D in sunlight, vitamin A, zinc for if you have a virus. Um, well, let's just start there. We have some other questions, but that's a lot right there.
So I saw these questions and I thought, these are really big, good, important questions. And I think the best answer I can give is I think we should be going back to basics for nutrition, general nutrition support, which is, nothing too weird or experimental. I think that recommendations for plenty of fruits and vegetables, for lean meats and fish, for whole grains, for some dairy, so nuts and seeds, that's really the best advice, because that's going to give you essential nutrients, it's going to give you the polyphenols, and it's not really a question of boosting your immune system. So in my opinion, it's more a question of making sure that your immune system isn't compromised by unhealthy nutrition. And for that reason, I do still recommend a one-a-day multivitamin that just covers all the bases, in addition to as healthy a diet with very limited junk food. So the saturated fat issue, I think, again, it can be standard recommendations, which is to limit saturated fat and sugars and refined carbs. And I know that's controversial to on the saturated fat, but saturated fat is a pro-inflammatory nutrient too. So in these times, it's not just a question of cardiovascular risk, but there may also be some benefit for keeping the saturated fat low by not adding to the inflammatory burden of your body through food. So I'm in favor of keeping saturated fat low, but monosaturated fats like olive oil high. Now, eggs have saturated fat, but I think they should be part of your menu if you like eggs, for the reason that they've just got so many other awesome things in them that I think those benefits outweigh the small amount of saturated fat, particularly if you cook them in oil, not butter. So you're not adding to the saturated fat that way. Eggs have choline, they have iron, they just have a lot of very good things, which, I think our bodies are going to really welcome.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And as a nutritionist, as you are, what I find nutritionists believe that it's better to get your nutrition from food than from a pill generally, because there are a lot of micronutrients and things that we haven't even discovered yet in food. So whole healthy foods are generally very helpful. And also, like, we should make a nod to the fact that we're a weight loss program. Um, Junk food is going to diminish your resistance significantly. And I don't think you can pour vitamin pills on top of junk food and call it healthy. Right? So this is another reason to work on your nutrition and your weight and to get the bad stuff out of the house, because it could be potentially even better for you to not have junk than to be trying to optimize, specific add-ins.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I think to the extent that we can avoid junk food, do as Lee says, we get all of the polyphenols and other things which are not defined as essential. I mean, the rules about essential, what's an essential nutrient, are very basic. You know, basically, the absence of a nutrient has to kill you within about 8 weeks or give you really severe deficiency symptoms that, you know, leave you lying in bed with, you know, your skin sloughing off or something like that. That's how they define essential nutrients. But that's they don't count, you know, how good is this for your immune system, how good is this for, you know, keeping you alive in 30 years rather than next week. Those things don't factor in. So there's so many things we don't know that I do strongly think that healthy food is the way to go. And when I've been in the supermarket, I've actually been really impressed that people are not stocking up on junk food by and large. You know, they might have one bag of chips or one small container of ice cream, but there's people who are ladling in whole grains and fruits and vegetables and chicken breast. And, you know, I've been really impressed by how everybody's taking the nutrition pretty seriously, actually. That, I mean, that's not to say that I think the vitamins are optional. I do think that it's insurance policy. You know, maybe the particular healthy foods that you have are short on one or two nutrients. If you have a multivitamin too, you'll make sure you get those.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and we do recommend multivitamin, calcium,
Yeah,
omega-3s, things
yeah.
like that they are essential, and you want to make sure you get enough of them for sure. Um, I think that covers most of our, oh, there was one also a question about whole fat dairy versus skim
All
dairy
right.
products.
So I think low fat dairy is great because the high fat dairy is saturated fat, and I do think that it's still worth avoiding saturated fat. I know it's a controversial issue, but that's really related, as I said, to the cardiovascular angle, and we're talking about bigger things, including your immune system here. So, you know, it's not like it's a life or death thing, but you know, choosing a low saturated fat product rather than a high one is probably a good thing. We also had a question on diabetes in that section as well. You know, what would be good backup foods for drop in blood glucose? Um, so I think, you know, something like these individual containers of applesauce would be a terrific thing to have.
Hmm.
Or you can, you know, put in some baggies, a couple of teaspoons of raisins, and get one of those or carry one in your pocket or something like that for when you have a bad drop in blood glucose that you need to manage. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
need to resort to candy and unhealthy things. There's some healthy options for that.
yeah, absolutely. And you get some more nutrients that way also, which is great. Um, there was a question about um, eggs and diabetes, I think, but I'm not sure if I remember that correctly. Oh yeah, there was the drop in glucose. Maybe I'm confusing that. Um, and you know, one of the question mentioning zinc, nuts are a great source of zinc. So if you're getting a little bit of nuts, then you're getting some zinc that way.
Uh-huh.
You can think about zinc lozenges for if you get sick. It does seem to be helpful with viral. That's what people seem to be saying.
I mean, zinc is a difficult nutrient to get. Actually, I mean, nutritionists tend to recommend ridiculous things like oysters, and I'm thinking, how many of us eat how many oysters? Because like one oyster gives you the whole daily requirement for one day or something. But you know, beyond zinc, there's some in eggs, there's some in lean red meat. It's not an There's some in whole grains. It's not an easy nutrient to get, in fact.
Yeah, so supplementing there can be helpful.
Uh-huh.
Um, okay, that's great. So we have some questions about stress and availability eating. You know, I think a lot of people have stocked up, and so there's all this food in the house, right? We have the five food instincts. One of them is availability, which could be in the house as well as outside. So even if you're not going out, right? So you have a stocked kitchen and you're bored, or it's comfort because you're alone or cooped up, or self-isolating and you're worried, or eating after dinner, which I know is a big thing for almost everybody, um, and just snacking in general, you know. So those are the questions that have come in around that topic.
So if there was easy answers, I could give them. There are no easy answers, and I think we are all going to have to think about the best way to control this for ourselves. But I can, I have a few thoughts. One is that we are a social species. It's in our genes to be part of a community, to have people we love and care about, to think about shared problems as half problems. And one of the awful things about this virus is it's taken away a lot of our social connections. And I think working out ways, creative ways to put those back in may reduce the stress for a lot of us. And so taking away the stress that's underlying some of the stress related eating. Maybe we need to go to virtual dinner parties where you set up your computer with your cousins or whoever you have regular dinners with, and do your family dinners that way. But to make a connection. In my house, we've been sitting down for a small glass of wine before dinner, and those of us who don't drink wine have a small glass of water. But it's a time to connect, and it's become a new ritual that we all look forward to. I think I do, to come back to some suggestions I made earlier, I think that controlling food when you're bored, when you're lonely, when you're stressed, does essentially come down to deciding what rules and rituals and accountability systems will work for you. Daily food logging combined with decisions about when you can have your first meal of the day, when you need to finish by, will do a lot. If you find that you're struggling to implement that successfully by yourself, asking for the help of somebody you love to be involved in helping you, feel strong at different times. I think that will go a long way for many of us, combined with intentionally reaching out so that we're not just losing all of those social connections, we're replacing virtual ones in a better way.
Mm.
And I think for the iDieters, for the people who are on our message boards, I think I would love to see people connecting and sharing their over health food. That's something that we're going to be promoting and can be very helpful. I know that Lee also, in addition to being an iDiet counselor, he is a mindful, healthy living kind of person too. And I know that he would be happy to talk to people in that capacity as well.
Yes, we at the end of this, we'll ask for your input, everybody who's listening, to what we could do to help support you more in terms of classes and coaching and things like that. A point that I think I'm forgetting now, but one piece of advice I got from an iDieter was to let somebody else make your plate up for you. Like if you're out at a party, that doesn't apply right now, but say you're out at a buffet, assign the person you're with to make your plate up for you so that you can't get out of control. Let them decide. So to your point, Dr. Roberts, about asking for accountability at home, if you set up accountability buddies within the family, that could be really helpful also. I love that. I love that suggestion. Hopefully I'll remember the other thing. But so the next set of questions is about limited availability of healthy foods, or inavailability of the specific healthy foods that you're most used to. And one thing I can say also to frame this, because we have gotten many questions about fiber one. They didn't plan this well because they didn't know that the virus was coming, right? But the fiber one people completely re-engineered their brand and brought out some new products. And so they're working their new packaging and their new products through the distribution system, which happened to coincide with this craziness. So there's an extra constraint on fiber one just at the moment because they have new packaging and fresh supplies coming through the system, but they're going to start showing up. So fiber one will come back, okay? But generally, um, we had questions about like if I'm accustomed to relying on yogurt and eggs for, you know, good healthy proteins like the fruit and yogurt parfait or egg-based breakfasts, um, specific fiber one products or specific brands of protein bars and things like that. Um, how could we manage that, Dr. Roberts?
Yeah. I do not think that yogurt and eggs are going to run out. I would be very surprised. I think the things that are going to run out. I think whole flour has been somewhat hard to get hold of because people are imagining making bread at home, which is great. Frozen vegetables are in short supply because people have been stocking up, and cans of vegetables are also in short supply. I think the last things that are going to be in short supply are actually fresh things. So I'm personally not worried about yogurt and eggs or fresh vegetables to cook. I
Yeah,
think that
those animals are going to keep producing, right? We need to do something with, you know, the chickens will keep laying eggs.
right,
The cows
exactly,
don't take the day off, right?
exactly. You know, I mean, to reframe the issue a little bit, which is that if you're only going to shop every 2 weeks to reduce your risk of viral infections, I think we can all need to get a bit smart about how to use our fresh produce. So, you know, I think for me, that means not wasting anything. I don't want to throw things away at this time. Fresh food seems too valuable to throw out. And, you know, having a plan for how you use the most perishable things first when you get a delivery, and that you keep the things which are going to last the longest and the freshest so that they're at the end of the 2 week cycle. Things like that can be very helpful. Eggs and yogurt will last 2 weeks in the fridge fine. You know, eggs are not very good if you leave them out of the fridge, but they fridge very well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for the Fiber One Original substitutes, people who shop in Market Basket, they have a very good alternative product, which they still had last weekend. I don't know whether they have this weekend with Fiber Active, I think it's called. It's basically indistinguishable. And if you go on Instacart, and I did this morning before the meeting to check, although I didn't find any Fiber One Original on Instacart in several supermarkets, I did find All Brand, which is our second preferred product. So there should be plenty of All Brand as a substitute for now.
Right. Yeah. So bring your glasses to the store, read labels, be prepared to look for alternate brands. You may discover something that you quite like. You know, it's an opportunity to, you know, there's YouTube has fantastic algorithms for showing you things that are related to things you like. Somehow it started showing me this series of Depression era cooking that this very nice filmmaker made intimate little films of his grandmother cooking the same foods that they cooked during the Depression. And, you know, it's a lot of potatoes, and she made a um, dandelion salad. And, you know, so I think about that now because we're talking about like which specific brand of high fiber cereal can I get or not get. We're not at that point yet, right? And so it's nice to be thankful for what you can get and to be aware of like we've been very resourceful as a country, and it's a perspective reset, I think.
And I think to be proud of your resourcefulness, you know, how you're going to be smart about putting good food on the table for your family that everybody enjoys and that it's healthy, even if it's not exactly on the list that you went shopping with.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and to your point about parboiling things before and making sure that you don't waste anything, you know, pretty much anything you get fresh, you can also freeze. You can cook it up and freeze it. You can
That's true.
parboil it and freeze it. So you can sort of triage, look at what you got,
Mm-hmm.
triage that, figure out the lifespan of each thing, and then figure out what you're going to do with it in terms of cooking because sometimes cooking something will preserve it longer than just sitting in the fridge.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And actually, to that point, we got a great question in the chat about people really do want to continue to be able to eat fresh things, so we can talk a bit about that. So I think you can dilute bleach into water and use it as a wash in some cases, but what are your thoughts on that?
I would love to know the answers. I mean, let's move this over to the iDiet website. I mean, I didn't do an exhaustive search on what washers will safely look after fresh produce, but I would really like to know the answer to that. I mean, if anybody has any links on that, can they please share them, and I will be thrilled to evaluate them and see if they're credible, because it is an important topic, and it's true that I've been very cautious about that. But if there's something that's going to make lettuce safe, I'm going to jump on it.
Yeah, and this is a great time to invite everybody listening to comment on our post on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Uh, We have this event was announced on all of those services. Please jump on and comment and share with everybody else what you got out of this. What is one or two key points that you got from this conversation, which will help everybody else? Because everybody hears things differently. So the more we can share good knowledge, useful knowledge, it helps the community, right? So please do share that. And if you have links to reputable sources, it'll help everybody. I know there's one product that we came across recently called Force of Nature, which is a really interesting device that makes, I'm going to forget the term, but they use this to sanitize food production equipment in factories. Um, it's the same process used to sanitize the giant equipment used to make your soups and your sauces and things in factories. And they turned it into a little countertop device, and it is EPA, FDA registered, and can also be used as a fruit wash, as a produce wash.
Is that right, Lee? You can use that as a food wash?
That's what their blog says. They're very careful with their language. I'm sure they've vetted everything through their lawyers, right?
Yeah.
So, but these are the use suggestions that they've made for it.
Oh,
And I've been using one for a couple of years as just in the normal course of business, washing my produce, because it comes with a spray bottle. You make this stuff up in the device, and it is a disinfectant and a deodorizer, but it's safe for use on food. It's safe for use around babies and pets and things. Um, and that's one of the suggested uses. You spray down your produce.
uh-huh.
Everybody should make that decision for themselves. They have a blog you can go on. That's just what I happen to have in my kitchen now, which I'm really glad, because I can't get bleach, right? There are other things I can't get.
Yeah,
And it's a
no, you can't.
substitute.
Just while I think about it, and for those people who are following a vegetarian or vegan eating plan, I think that can be perfectly healthy. The qualifications of raw food and whether we can clean those produce carefully apply just the same. I would also say that things like B12, make sure that you take the vitamins that you might be short in as well if you're a vegan, so that you don't get short of anything else in addition. Um,
B12, yes, the
right.
vegans have to supplement with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I was on the FDA website, I think yesterday, looking this up because somebody had a question about washing things. And their guidelines, even during this time, are lots of fresh water, just lots of rinsing, lots of fresh water,
Uh-huh.
um, agitating and using pressure with your hands or a brush if the produce is hardy enough to handle being manhandled and rubbed, because that physical action does remove things. And the point that the FDA also made was that washing something right before you consume it is better than washing it the moment it comes into your house. Because if you're washing it right before you consume it, then whatever's on it doesn't have a chance to replicate, to grow. Because there's a reason we say a post went viral, right? Viruses grow exponentially. So washing right before, I wonder if maybe you wash it when it comes in the house and you wash it before you eat it. But
I'm skeptical. Does the virus grow on food? I'm skeptical. That sounds like hocus pocus, but we can look it up. There's so many things that
Mm.
we're learning here.
Well, this was an article that they just brought forward. It may have been more about bacteria, like concerns. But we're
Hmm.
talking about fresh produce here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm extrapolating. I shouldn't. Um, so the next topic we have here is family stuff, interpersonal stuff. We also got a question about, if I live alone, if I have limited social contact. That's something we can also talk about. But the questions in this section of our chat are, I was doing fine on my own, but now my adult kids have come back to live with us during this time. How do I cook for myself and others? Or there are other kinds of food in the house. Everyone is underfoot and I'm stressed. Right? There's a lot of change. Right?
There's so much change. There's so much change. I see the biggest thing we should be doing with adult kids, and I have an adult kid coming back who's back in my house too. So this is certainly an issue I'm dealing with. Is talking and communicating. This is such a huge thing. We're dreaming about it. We're having nightmares about it. We all need to keep talking and processing the news as it comes out, because we're adjusting our worldview of what this is going to mean for us and the world, almost on a daily basis. I mean, for my part, I hope that adult kids can become a very positive force in this. They don't want their parents and their grandparents to die. Um, we we have the privilege, if you like, of having our kids at home for a little while before they fly the nest again, and using that as a positive thing to enjoy their time with us. And part of that in my house means that I don't want to go back to being a full-time mom. My daughter's 27. Am I going to clean her room? I'm not. And I would also say that as a working woman with a full-time job at Tufts, uh, I have a cleaner who comes in once a week, half a day normally, and he's now home with his family. So we've lost our cleaner, and I've got a kid who makes a lot of mess in the house, and no cleaner. What are we going to do? So we actually had a discussion this morning about how to navigate these things, and it was a really positive time, because she actually wanted to help. She could see the house was getting messy. She didn't like the house being messy. Um, and so first we made a list of all the cleaning jobs. Then we asked for volunteers for who wanted to take what, so that you could grab the job that you found, if you like, least objectionable. There was leftover jobs that we assigned by consensus. And then finally, we decided to do all of our cleaning together so that it would be a communal activity once a week. And it came out of it. So rather than it just being like a source of friction, it was turned into an opportunity to bond over hardship, if you like. I hate cleaning. Maybe some people like it, but for me, it's the job I hate most. And we managed to turn it into a positive thing. Not to set ourselves up as paragons of managing this well or anything, because like everybody else, we're challenged. We're challenged to the max. But I think if we can all keep communicating, that has to be really the only solution to the interpersonal kind of challenges, and recognizing that they exist, and that we're all, just having working people at home who used to go out of the house and now they're underfoot. Those are big things to manage for all of us. And if we can keep talking, um, and try and have empathy for the others people's position as well as our own, we'll manage it better.
Yeah, there's opportunity in every challenge. And so the opportunity to enjoy each other more. Like I know that I've lost elders that I really wish I could ask questions of now and learn more about their life. So anybody who's younger and listening, this is a great opportunity to learn more about the history of your family, what happened in your grandparents and parents' lives 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Um, really gain that knowledge, and parents can enjoy their kids more, because kids have a lot to teach parents as well. But it's an opportunity to improve relationships, deepen relationships, learn more about each other. work on relationships. Marriages can be improved. Being thrown together doesn't have to mean stress. It can be a chance. It can be an opportunity. It's all how you approach it. It's just like, to bring us back to weight loss, we sometimes hear from dieters who are like, help me get back to this specific body shape, size, weight, whatever, so that I can then go back to my normal life. We saw this a lot on The Biggest Loser, where they'll crash diet and then they go back to their normal life and they gain the weight back, right? There's this sort of short-term intervention with a almost unconscious belief that once I achieve this, then I'll go back to what I used to be doing. Now, obviously, with weight loss, you can't do that. You have to have a new health supportive life and a weight supportive life that's going to be a new normal once you hit your goal. In this situation that we're in now, I don't know if we're going to be going back to the old normal, right? We need to be thinking about how to live in whatever the new normal is. And so it's not so much like dealing with the temporary stress of this situation so that I can then go back to exactly the way things were before my old normal. I think we need to be a little bit more open to what is the new normal going to be, and be resilient and flexible and open to what's going to come.
Nobody knows what the new normal is going to be. I mean, I'm personally hoping it's going to be quite similar to the old normal, which I liked. And it may be, there's a lot of uncertainties. But I think that any situation with enormous adversity, which is certainly what we're in today, is not just a situation for suffering, but it's a situation that provides a lot of opportunities for a reboot. And certainly this is a wonderful opportunity for a reboot on healthy nutrition. Anybody who's watching this webinar is someone who's interested in healthy nutrition, who's probably interested in healthy weight management too. We have an enormous incentive to eat healthy and to manage our weight in a sensible, healthy way at this, because it's going to help us come through the, potential infections. We're going to emerge, at a healthy weight, looking, way better 2 months down the road when we start to see our friends again. We have all these incentives in the world to do this. And I think that for many people, that will, be the added push that they need to help them do a really great job. And food is something that you can control. We can't control how many infections of coronavirus are in our town or in our country or in the world. But we can control what food we bring into the house and what food we prepare and when we eat it. And by doing that, we take control of our lives, and we're going to feel better about ourselves for having that opportunity.
Yeah, knowing what you can control and rewarding yourself for being good about it, reminding yourself that you're doing a good job with it, can be enormously helpful for
Right.
mood and attitude, and just to give yourself the oomph to continue. Right? So that's a great segue into weight management, because like, as you were saying, weight gain is an inflammatory condition, and inflammatory conditions are bad for immunity and also risk factors. So weight loss can really help be anti-inflammatory and be supportive of health, especially if you have weight to lose, right? So we got questions about weight loss. Have our guidelines changed during this health situation? That's sort of the gist of it, right? We got questions about intermittent fasting or timed window eating. And, what are your thoughts on ways to manage the sort of like shut-in weight loss situation?
Yeah. So my guidelines are actually not changing. I mean, I've always set up iDiet in a way that, that we will follow the science. If the science points us to a better way to lose weight than the way iDiet is constructed today, we will change our recommendations. I have no problem with that at all. But actually, we've called it really well so far, and there's nothing I would change. It's super healthy. It's really suitable for sensible 1 to 2 pound a week regular weight loss with healthy eating. I think one thing I would change now, which we talked about for non-food related issues, is to make sure you add some exercise. We like exercise in our diet, and people do become more active over time because they lose weight and they feel better, and feeling better sends them out to the gym or something like that. So people become active. I would say, start adding some exercise starting tomorrow, because I think improving your cardiovascular health is just truly a good thing as well at this time. And I guess another thing I would say changing is that I'm more in favor of food logs now, because we can't always rely on getting precisely the foods on the menus. And if that's the case, the foods logs will help you stay on track, even if you have to do some substitutions. So yes, I'm a big fan of that. I think intermittent, so time restricted eating, that's to say, not eating at any old time, having a time when you have breakfast, having a time when you finish dinner, and that's it. No more food after 6 p.m. or whatever. I think that's terrific. Intermittent fasting, something like 5-2, we've certainly got instructions in advance, in our diet advance, on how to do that if you're interested. But I think at this point we should hold off on that, because I think although there may be long-term benefits of intermittent fasting, I also think there may be short-term negative effects on immune function, which I would not want to kind of give anybody, when we're all at risk of a new infection. So I think that the standard regular diet plans without the intermittent fasting option is where we should be going at this point.
Mm-hmm. It's good to set some rules for yourself and just try to follow those
Mm-hmm.
as a start, and having rules about when you're eating and when you're not eating. And hopefully there's someone else in the house who can help keep you honest, like we were mentioning. You can remind each other, because you want to help support each other's health.
Right.
We did get a couple of specific nutrition questions, like the value of coconut water, the value of smoothies in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
So coconut water doesn't really have anything to speak of in it. I think it's delicious. I love it personally. Um,
And we
it
use it in the
doesn't.
modified fast also.
Right. Right. I mean, I don't think it has any particular virtues at this time. Something like almond milk has calcium, and we want to look after our bones as well as our general health during this time.
Mm.
And the same thing for smoothies. Smoothies, we do have some smoothie recipes, and I think that for people who don't get hungry, smoothies are fine. But there's a certain feeling in the scientific community that many of us feel that smoothies are less satisfying than food that you have to chew, particulate food that takes a while to digest. So if you're one of those lucky people who are really not too impacted by hunger, then I think a smoothie is fine, and Lee can fish out some of our recipes for you. But for anybody who's struggling with hunger or not feeling satisfied, I would stay away from the smoothies at this time.
Yeah, I think time and again, this has been borne out in groups. I hear from dieters all the time
Mm.
that liquid calories don't really fill you up. We don't really have a mechanism for knowing that we've consumed calories if we're not chewing. And so being able to chew your calories, it's comforting. Like, I think one of the reasons why people stress eat is, I call it the chewing meditation. It's a way to focus on your senses, and it's
Yeah.
enormously comforting. So to the extent that you can take what was going into your smoothie and put it in a bowl and eat it, that can be more satisfying. But like Dr. Roberts says, some people are able to manage that fine, and then it's a way to get a lot of nutrient-dense foods in. But if you ever read articles written or profiles of celebrity trainers, the people who try to get the next Superman to bulk up for the camera, that sort of thing. The way they get their stars to gain weight is by force feeding them liquid calories, because you literally can't chew enough to gain the kind of weight that they're working on. And so they force it into the actors and the celebrities in liquid form, which is, I think, instructive in this circumstance, you know.
Very instructive. Very instructive. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Um, we did get some questions because you're a bit of a celebrity, Dr. Roberts. What are you specifically eating now? Like, what was on your most recent grocery list or your last few meals?
Well, so as an academic faculty of a major university, I have, I think, had the real advantage that the university saw these shutdowns coming before they were really widely accepted in the public. And we were being pelted by, pelted with emails changing the instructions every day, but they were all about, prepare, shut down, constrain. And for that reason, my shopping was a pretty advanced thing for this coronavirus. And I have to admit, I have not at this point changed my shopping or my or what I eat. So I've been eating IDIET friendly foods. I did stock up a little bit, and I'm thinking I don't believe the food is going to run out. I really don't. But let's say that there's a small glitch. I bought in a large bag of wheat berries, and I bought in a large bag of dried chickpeas. I have many Indian spices in my house, and if we ever needed a meal and we couldn't get a delivery, for example, we would be eating curried wheat berries and chickpeas, and it wouldn't like be fun, but it would be food. So my shopping lists have been identical, apart from this minor stock up, and also the Ensure and the glucose electrolyte solutions, and then a bit of fruit juice in preparation for somebody being sick, which I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So far, I'm not eating anything differently, except that I would say that, I mean, there's something about being faced with a major life challenge that makes you take nutrition very seriously. I mean, I'm a person who's a disinhibited eater, and I get hungry. Um, I have not been tempted by anything bad. I've been totally on my game for about 2 weeks at this point, which has been great.
Yeah. And I think that brings us to the next question, really, which is around managing emotions and the meaning of what's going on right now. Because, like, it was actually really wonderful, both of us planning for this webinar, because we knew that it would be, or we hoped it would be helpful to people, right? So having something that you do that helps people can be enormously, like, what, greater meaning. But okay, so to this question was talking about depression, please, how to get through this, and the feeling of just wanting to do the minimum food prep because your mood is low, or you're having all the feelings.
So depression is a hard disease to manage. I mean, I have relatives who have depression. It's a very hard disease to manage. And I think that, the IDIET lists that we have, Lee, where, there's frozen meals and, you add some vegetables or something like that, we should be sharing this to help, because if you just can't face cooking,
Mm.
it doesn't help if you're eating unhealthy food as well. So I think having some no-cook meals off the list would be very helpful, and to reach out to friends and family to talk to and to get help, and of course to your healthcare provider to make sure that you're getting appropriate medical support as well.
Yeah, there are legal. So what Dr. Roberts is pointing to is there are prepared frozen dinners, prepared frozen meals that are legal, to our guidelines, especially if you also get frozen or canned veggies and add them as sides for more nutrition, more fiber and more nutrition. So you can just continue to follow us, and we can share those with the community. Um, yeah, and then, become a helper, see how you can help. There are depression and suicide chat lines that are looking for
Yeah.
workers.
Yeah.
You know, there are things you can do maybe in the immediate community. Do neighbors need food prepared or help? You can get on nextdoor.com and make friends with your neighbors if you don't know your neighbors. And there are probably chat circles going right now on nextdoor.com in your immediate community where people are doing resource sharing or work sharing or checking in on elders and things like that. Meaning can be very helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else on that topic. And that is pretty much it. We did get a couple questions about our classes. You know, we had timed, you know, we work on a calendar and we didn't realize what was going to happen. We had timed our classes to start after tax filing, you know, so the week after April 15th was when our next group is going to start. If that is something that's interesting to people listening to this recording or here with us live, let us know. We could try to start one that's sooner. We do also, for our graduates, have one-on-one coaching, and we have our On Track program, which we've rebooted with weekly meetings. So if you're looking for weekly support and community and more advanced topics, we do have a weekly program that's that's affordable for any IDIET graduates that you can join. Just go to the regular registration page on our website and you'll see information about that. And chat in, let us know if you're looking for one-on-one coaching or what exactly your needs are, and we'll orient ourselves to be of service, you know, to whatever extent we can.
You know, and I just hope this has been helpful. You know, we're all working out, you know, how to navigate this new situation, and it's really, you know, a great joy to me personally to share any nutrition knowledge that I can that can be helpful to people. So, you know, I hope you'll keep your questions coming, and we will, you know, think about some more sessions like this if there's a need for them.
Yeah, please continue to send in your questions. You can respond to the emails that you may have gotten, or you can find us on social. Because if this was helpful and we get enough questions to produce another helpful webinar, we're happy to do that. Stay
Yes.
in touch. Let us know what you need. We're here for you. We want to help. Thanks, everybody, for being here with us. You really made it a joy. Appreciate all your comments. And continue to be well, everybody.
So yes, thank you from
Thank you
me
all.
too, and I'll look forward to reading all the chats and things that I know have come through, and I haven't had a chance to read yet.
Yeah, it was great seeing like people attending from practically every state. It was great seeing all your names and locations. It's wonderful to be able to connect in this way. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll end this now.